Welcome back to Cure for the Common Game. Today, in deck number 832, we're going to talk about the bride herself, Olivia. For 6 mana, we get a 3/4 flying haste. Whenever Olivia attacks, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains, when you don't control a legendary vampire, exile this creature. So, her being the legendary vampire, that fulfills that. However, what if something unfortuitous would happen to our blushing bride here? Well, then if you don't have a legendary vampire in play, those creatures get exiled. So my mind went to, well, in that case, I need to have all of the legendary vampires that fit her color scheme. And I know I'm missing one, the original Olivia, but that card has gotten a little pricey lately. So, she is having a grand wedding, and she has invited all of the legendary vampires from across the multiverse, not just in Innistrad. And they all received, of course, the wedding invitation. I had to put that in there. I can't put her gown in there because it's white and not in her color identity. But I was able to secure her some clothing. She's got some really kicking boots because it is 6 mana for a 3/4 flyer. Now, that seems like a lot, but her ability is outstanding, so we are going to need to protect her. I have had a chance to play this. I played this last night. It did really, really well, but the only problem is when she starts bringing out free giant creatures, people tend to target her. So the Swiftfoot boots and the Whisper Silk cloak, both of course wearable items suitable for any bride, are needed to protect her. Now, let's see here. Like I said, she is 6 mana, so let's get into our ramp, shall we? And that there is a bunch. We have a Dark Ritual, which I thought was fitting for a vampire wedding. We have Rakdos Cluestone, Charcoal Diamond. Now, what I did here, there are a lot of these mana rocks because I wanted to be able to play Olivia when she mattered, soon. So that is why all of the mana rocks, because we are in black and red, that is pretty much what we have. Because the idea is to get Olivia out there as fast as possible, and then she can start bringing back her legendary guest, right? So that is the idea. And Expedition Map, while I know it is not technically ramp, but it can go find you that land you need. And Explorer Scope. She does operate off of attacking, so we might as well get a little ramp as well. Now, all of that, all things being equal, we have to have lands. Even if we draw the other legendary vampires, we're going to have to play them. So let's look at them. Shall we look at our guest list for the event? We have Strafon, Moral Progenitor. At the beginning of your end step, you create a blood token. Blood tokens are important, but not crazy important for the deck, as they allow you to loot. You get a blood token for each player who lost life this turn, and when Strefon attacks, you may sacrifice 2 blood tokens. If you do, you may put a vampire card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, and it gains indestructible that turn. So it's another way to cheat the cost of ones in your hand. So, Miss Angie Falconrath, discard a card to draw a card. Now, we have to get these legendary vampires into the grave some way. And the old-fashioned way of just casting them and letting them die doesn't really sit well. So, Angie you can tap Angie to discard a legendary vampire to draw a card, and then Olivia can swing in and bring that vampire back. So, We have Drana, the Last Blood Chief. When Drana attacks, and it is surprising the amount of these that actually have flying. Last night when I played this, everything I drew had flying. You're talking legendary vampires, most of them are going to fly anyway, right? But whenever Drana attacks, defending player chooses a non-legendary creature card in your graveyard. Now, this ability doesn't work that well because we only have one non-legendary vampire in the deck, and it was just too good to not to play with. The Vampire Socialite. Each other vampire is going to enter the battlefield with a 1/1. Yeah. Miri the Cursed, all the way from Dominara. Or Wrath, as it were. Same plane now. Anyway, flying first strike, haste, dealing combat damage to get a counter, just like the vampires of old. We have Anawan the Rune Sage, which also doubles as remarkable removal. We don't have to sacrifice anything because we have only vampires. We have Miss Irene Singier all the way from Ulgrotha. The message of the wedding got that far. White and green enchantments each cost an additional 2 to cast. While that not stellar, it can matter. Enchantress decks are a big thing, especially with that latest one getting printed in MH2. But Irene also brought a little taste of home in Coscom Falls. This is Black's only version of the Ghostly Prison propaganda effect. Yes, we do have to tap a creature during our upkeep to keep it around, but it works. We have Zagras, Thief of Heartbeats. Now, giving Death Touch to... We can ignore the party mechanic here because, it just doesn't happen. But flying Death Touch haste and giving all your team Death Touch is a pretty beautiful thing. The not-so-happy bride, Olivia, mobilized for war, doing the +1 counter thing. Now, Singier the Dark Baron was the first card that Olivia was brought back with for me in the game last night. Now, that being said, this thing is nuts. Have you read this? It's not an expensive card, it's cheap. But 4/4 flyer, but whenever another creature dies, Singier don't have to kill it. It don't have to be yours. Any creature. And the Dark Baron here got about 14 counters before it was dealt with. And once it was dealt with, she just brought him back. I didn't get the lose the game trigger, but it was headed that way. It was to the point to where the entire table had to turn its attention in an archenemy scenario in order just to keep the deck from going nuclear. We have Krovax the Cursed. Counts as a vampire. We all know what that means. I won't do it again. Y'all know the joke. Do the +1 counter thing. We have other Anji, new Anji, the Maid of Dishonor, and or one or more other vampires enter the battlefield. You get those blood tokens that we love so much because it allows us to filter, right? The Haunt of Hightower, because sometimes defending player discards a card. 6 mana for a 3/3 flyer is not where we want to be at, but whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, I would have loved to have had this last night when Danny Mine grinded the table for 5. Oh, would have loved it. Floridian. Florian? Yeah, this one. Had this one out. This was actually my first turn, or my first creature played, because I had it in my hand, and I was scared of getting beat by little guys, so I just threw this out there to kind of steer the 1/1s and 2/2s away. It worked. Drana the Calestra Blood Chief. Removal built into a flying 4/4. The original of Baron Singier. Not bad. I like the new one a little better, mainly because it's not 8 mana, and then Kazarov, Siegwarth, Pureblood. I love that. 4 mana is a little much for a shock ability, but that's kind of good. So let's look at our card draw, shall we? And as I mentioned before, looting is kind of exactly where we want to be at, because in order to... The very first time I played Olivia and swung with her, I look at my 9-card graveyard, and I didn't have a creature in it, and I was like, well, okay. So, Faithless Looting and Tormenting Voice, very big to, get those cards into the graveyard. I'm liking this new Imposing Grandeur as well. Each player may discard their hand, and to be honest with you, if you're sitting there holding 2 or 3 legendary vampires, let it go. And then we'll draw 6, because that's what our commander cost. Sign in Blood, Ambition's Cost, and Promise of Power. For me, in this particular deck, the Promise of Power is 5 mana, 5 life, 5 cards, which is not a bad rate. I'll probably never entwine it for the demon thing, but we do have a Diabolic Tutor. I didn't have the art I wanted, because this would have been the perfect art for Lily Whispering into Chandra's ear, but it is technically the same card. Now, I did put the Honeymoon Hearse in here because Edgar can't have it in his deck, just like she can't. Anyway, 2 untapped creatures you control. It becomes an artifact creature. It becomes a 5/5 vehicle with trample. It's not a vampire, technically not a creature, but I felt flavor-wise it needed to be in there. We do have an Heirloom Blade, since we, equip creature dies, you're just going to get another one. That card in your hand, yeah. And then the Hero's Blade to auto-equip once Olivia brings back a legendary vampire from the yard. So, that brings us to removal. Obviously, there is a bunch, because we have a lot of larger creatures. We don't have a whole lot of them. We're not going to out-creature the green or the white deck, for sure. But here's what we have. We have a Braid for that artifact destruction. Terminate. Murder. Diabolic Edict. I tend to save spot removal for those creatures that are a problem, just existing by themselves. Pyroclasm is going to help tremendously against the weenie decks or the token decks or what have you. In that same vein, Vampire's Vengeance, it doesn't hurt your vampires, but it pyroclasms and it gives you that blood token. That's exactly what we want. Just a good old-fashioned terror. I don't use terror a whole lot anymore, but if you've seen the trailer for this set, terror fits. Rakdos Charm did me some work. I didn't use it for the Destroy Target Artifact last night. I used it to deal. Each creature deals 1 damage to its controller, and it dealt, I don't know, probably 15 damage split up around the board. It's not bad. It's really good if you've got somebody with Storm Herding or Krinkoing or stuff like that. Oh, it's great. Feed the Swarm, because that is our enchantment removal for the deck. Yeah, thank goodness we have it, because we wouldn't have any if it wasn't for that. Doomblade, Hero's Downfall, and then our... I don't really mind the 6 mana Wrath here. I did get to play this last night. It did help out tremendously. But so much so that I don't even mind the 9 mana Wrath in Garrick's Wake, because we are ramped up with our artifacts to be able to play the big spells like Baron Singir. I felt like that these two wasn't that big of an ask. Wow, that was 7 years ago? Whoa. Anyway, that is going to bring us to our non-basic lands. We have Sulphurous Springs, Evolving Wilds, Rocky Tar Pit, Cinder Barrens, Whoop. Rakdos Carnarum. Bloodfell Caves. You guessed it, the Rogue's Passage. Rakdos Guildgate. Terramorphic Expanse. Command Tower. Exotic Orchard. Auckram Refuge. And lastly, the Castle Dracula. Now, what do y'all think about? I like the double named. I don't know, double titled, exactly what the term for this we're using is, but I like having the Castle Dracula and then actually what the magic name is. It, in my opinion, reduces confusion. But this is gorgeous artwork. I like Castle Dracula. It's flavorful. Now, granted, you only want it for vampires, but it really shouldn't be any other way, right? You know, you're paying that life to get that man of any color for only vampires. It's very flavorful. And let's face it, it's our bride's house. So that is what we have got for today. And Miss Olivia, I had fun playing it. It is a deck that can get crazy if left unchecked. Luckily, or unluckily, my playgroup does not let that happen. So 832 is done. We will put it on the wall and head to 833, which looks like Timothar. So I will see y'all next time, and I appreciate it. I really do. But we're going to go ahead and shuffle and cut.